Hello everyone, welcome back to the Splatoon 2 Octo expansion playthrough. We are working our way through some of the later missions in the game. Oh, this one is probably the most Portal feeling mission in the entire game, both in aesthetics and in level design, because it's all about like this giant white square and manipulating the room to try to find different angles to go through the same kind of like cube sort of level design, which is really neat. You can't look at this and tell me it doesn't look like Portal.
It kind of would. It kind of does, yeah. Like, I could see this kind of gimmick showing up in a Portal test chamber.
I mean, Portal already kind of had a Splatoon somewhat like mechanic in Splatoon 2.
Oh yeah,
Portal 2 with
shooting the different colored goop at the wall so that you could create portals there, and that led into
there was also the bouncy goop and the speedy goop.
Yeah, and that led into the whole amusing side plot element where, what's his name? What's the old guy?
Cave Johnson.
J.K. Simmons.
No.
I forget what his real name is, but he is J.K. Simmons.
Cave Johnson.
Cave Johnson, yeah, where he was experimenting with moon dust. Which is hilarious on more than one level when you understand the context of the experiments, but like...
Oh, I get it. Moon dust, like he was like snorting it. I get it.
No, that's not what I was getting at.
Well, that's partially it. He was also clearly on a lot of drugs.
I mean, he did end up like poisoning himself with it, but
yeah, pulled a bit of a Lex Luthor there.
But like the whole thing was that like in a massive show of ridiculous excess, this guy was mining moon dust just so that he could have these outrageous test chamber experiments with a portal device that he already knew full well worked. Why? What was the point?
Well, they do what they must be, Lewis. They do what they must because they can.
But they've already
That's all
done
the
it.
Explanation needed.
Do you have any idea?
Are you saying that Aperture Science is not actually good at science? I'm shocked.
They already knew that the portal gun worked, right? If they had just released it as was and explained what they knew about how it worked and what surfaces it worked on, they could have done so much good for the world. Instead, they kept on doing these goddamn expensive experiments while dealing with bankruptcy and other financial difficulties. And
I mean, this is also the company that spring-loaded their entire base to launch into space in the event of the apocalypse. So
right,
you have to remember, Lewis, that you can't get money for testing for a product that's already released.
But you can get money for selling it.
I don't understand.
Money for testing is just money that you have to pay back later. Money for selling is money that you can
That's a problem for
keep.
future Aperture Science.
So, like, the entire story of Portal is just amazing in how ridiculously stupid Aperture Science was. How excessive.
I mean, their chief competition is Black Mesa, and they're not much better, so...
Well, Black Mesa is, like, the lawful evil of like sci-fi corporations. Aperture Science is like the chaotic neutral.
Black Mesa was at least in a position of not having discovered something that they could use yet. Like, what was their whole thing? Trying to find like clean energy or something. That's usually how those stories go.
They mostly stumbled upon aliens.
They stumbled upon aliens while trying to accomplish something else. Okay, like there's nothing inherently wrong with that. They're like maybe they could have predicted that something like that could happen, but it was more of a surprise discovery in the midst of doing other things. Aperture Science were just fucking morons. They had something that they could already roll out in the way of like a scientific product that would have revolutionized society. And for whatever goddamn stupid reason, they decided to keep doing tests. Inane tests that didn't actually teach them anything of value. And the result of this was an AI who just tests for doing tests' sake. Because that's the compulsion of her programming. So they didn't need to do the tests, and the only thing they accomplished was creating a robot that does tests that don't need to be done.
And also murders people, which is another important part.
That too.
Yeah, Aperture is less concerned about the murder part.
The story conclusion of the multiplayer in Portal 2 is just the perfect end cap for the entire Portal saga, because there's all these people that are in cryostasis and they can be brought back, and presumably there's a reason you would want to bring them back, because the world seems to have been kind of destroyed somewhere behind the scenes of Aperture Science's nonsense. But instead,
we don't know what Gordon did in episode 3, because episode 3 never happened. So
but the way things are, the only person who gets out is what's her name, Shell, and yes. Everyone else is just going to be trapped with GLaDOS and killed in tests, because that's what Aperture Science created, a robot that only cares about testing.
You know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, Doom 2016 has a lot of similarities to Half-Life in the story. Like, even in just they were trying to do something seemingly innocuous. And then...
well, yeah.
Well, a lot of the Origin Energy stuff in 16 kind of gets read kind of to be something a bit more sinister after Eternal, so...
Yeah, and I remember that was part of the story that you guys
technically, as far as the base concept goes, Doom conceived it first, because I think that was more or less the story of the original game. But
well, sort of, yeah.
On the subject of I had a thought. I lost it. Damn it.
Half-Life or Portal?
I think it was more to do with Portal. But yeah. What I was thinking of was that Portal in concept is a lot like Vault-Tec and Fallout, only played more for laughs. I say played more for laughs, but Fallout 3 had the Gary Vault, so, yeah.
Well, there was a dark humor element to Fallout as well.
Yeah.
Where it's like, they have, like, the little Pip-Boy is the name of the guy. Like, that.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, it's just like, you're doing your thing for your country in sort of a dark humor, sarcastic, kind of mocking way, when they're talking about all the vaults and stuff like that, you know?
Well, not really, sort of, yeah. Fallout from the very beginning had this very sarcastic, ironic view of American of an American superiority complex, really. Where,
like, I remember, this is something I barely remember from high school, but I remember a friend was talking to me about the plot of one of the Fallout games, and they were like, and then America invaded Canada and took it over, so it would be easier for them to get the troops to Russia. And
yeah.
I'm like,
yeah, and like one of the first scenes in Fallout 1 is an FMV that includes a television broadcast in which the narrator is talking all patriotic, and on screen, American soldiers in power armor are kicking, laughing, and executing at gunpoint Canadian rebels. And there's such a dissonance between these two images in our modern consciousness, but the implication is that, like, society as it was pre-apocalypse in the Fallout universe was just so far gone that they couldn't tell the difference. And that's pretty much where Fallout 1 exploded and the world ended. There are some things in later Fallout games that play around with these concepts as well. Like, one of Fallout 3's actually kind of funny inclusions was a virtual reality simulation in one of the DLC campaigns, where you're in this virtual reality battle against Chinese soldiers that was designed essentially to make American soldiers want to kill Chinese people. And it's full of, like, awful stereotypes. One of the punchlines that you can potentially stumble upon while doing this DLC is a persuade check to make the enemy general kill himself.
What?
A persuade check to make the enemy general kill himself. Because that was the stereotype. They wanted their soldiers to believe that Chinese soldiers were so obsessed with honor that they could actually be convinced to kill themselves.
I'd like to point out that I got killed by the invisible death plane as that hammer would have saved me. Just gonna throw that one out there.
Yeah,
thanks, game.
It's always unfortunate when games do that kind of thing where, like, there's clearly a visual way to kill yourself, but the game wasn't programmed to account for that because they...
I mean, like, Splatoon's normally very good about, like, in the single player, I should say, is normally very good about, like, you'll fall, and, like, if you could save yourself, even if it's inconvenient, you can.
Yeah.
So that was a wee bit
it's
unfortunate.
It kind of reminds me of Ratchet and Clank, where, like, in the original game, you could fly basically halfway across the level and land on the roof of the shop. And it was intentionally included in the game. There was a skill point for doing it, because this is Insomniac, and they were still doing skill points at that point. But, like, in the remake, you can't make the same jump because you'll cross a death plane before you get there.
Yeah. I mean, I guess they just don't want you to do as many kind of stuff that feels like it's out of bounds, I suppose.
It's more that they just weren't paying attention when they made the level, to be honest. But
yeah, I guess that makes sense.
like,
but you'd think that since it's something that the game rewards you for doing in the original, they'd think about it for a remake.
The reason that they do that is because they don't want the player falling for any long length of time and being delayed in getting back to the action because the death plane was just too far away, and at that point, why would you? And a lot of older platformers, there were pitfalls that you could fall into. I think of Gex and a lot of the levels in there. There were pitfalls that you could fall into that there's no way to get out of, but the game just takes forever to hit the point where it decides your character is dead. And that's annoying. And modern game designers want to avoid that kind of frustration. They want players to die, realize they died, and then get back into the action as quickly as the game can let them. So they'll put death planes in what seem like convenient locations for the player. And sometimes they just forget that beyond that death plane, there was a place that the player could land, or some object they could have interacted with that would have saved them and allowed them to continue on without dying. And allowing that to happen is really goddamn satisfying. Sometimes the best gameplay experiences come less from playing a level perfectly and more from playing the level imperfectly, but managing to make up for your own mistakes. And
it certainly is much more exciting when you save yourself and you're like, oh my god, I did that. And
you get that moment where you pump your fist in the air and yell clutch, you know?
Yeah. Versus when it comes to playing a level perfectly, I know that I tend to have problems when I'm playing games and I want to play a level perfectly, where I'll restart and do the first 10 seconds of a level over and over again, and when I make a mistake, I'll start over again. And this was a problem I had playing Streets of Rage 4, actually, and I had to tell myself to stop doing that in order to keep playing Streets of Rage 4 and keep enjoying it.
Oh, yeah.
I just told myself, I'm not going to get S ranks on all these levels. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
And then once I realized that, I started having a lot more fun playing Streets of Rage 4 again.
Yeah.
Speaking of, in about a week, the DLC for that game comes out, and I'm super stoked. But
oh, really?
That's time of this recording, anyway.
Yeah, that's completely off topic, our off topic discussion. So, you know.
Yeah.
No, this wasn't on topic discussion because we were talking about something that happened in the game. What am I talking about? I should have more faith in us.
Well, in any case, it's just interesting to think about designers and how they approach that kind of the placement of their death zones, what their priorities are, what they're thinking about when they design a level. You know,
It's interesting. I know one of my favorite examples is Mario Galaxy, where there aren't a lot of death planes in Mario Galaxy, but instead they had a thing where if Mario is suspended in midair for a certain amount of time, I don't know what the time is, he'll just die. Because they figured, okay, if something wonky happens with the gravity, and Mario's stuck in orbit in a planet and you can't get down, the player needs a way to be able to get back into the game. And so they implemented a system where if Mario's in air for too long, he just dies so that you can go back.
That's unfortunate, though, because it means that players can only experiment so far with actively trying to get Mario to stay in orbit.
I think it is a fairly lengthy period of time. Like, it's definitely over a minute, because I've definitely, like, just had Mario flying in orbit above some of the smaller planets for a significant amount of time. Then again, Mario Galaxy also does have the, I forget what they're called, but the black holes, that's what they are.
Yeah.
Floating in space that do also work as death planes. They're just kind of more like death spheres. Really.
Yeah, they're also telegraphed to the player. They tell the player that if you fall down here, you will die. And that's fairly important for something as freeform as Mario, I think.
Yeah. It is also cool when you do find the little, like, the trick you can do where you jump off of a planet at a certain way and then you can jump all the way to a different planet that they didn't expect. It feels a little bit, like, I mean, I guess that is basically just a skip, right? That's no different than, like, what Sonic level is it where you, like, clip your way through the wall and then you skip half the level?
That's a lot of them.
Okay, sure.
But if you're thinking of a specific one, probably the one with the 8-ball puzzle. Where you can just clip through the door that you're supposed to open with the 8-ball and skip the stupid physics bullshit.
Oh, you see, I was thinking of one of the 2D ones. Like, is there a Sonic 1 part where you, like,
There's
can
lots
clip
of
through a
support-
wall? And...
There's lots of parts of the classic Sonic games where you can screen wrap and shit.
Yeah, I know there's that. There's screen wrapping. I feel like it's not Labyrinth Zone, Marble Zone. I feel like you can clip through a wall and skip half the level.
I mean, possibly.
There might be a secret passage that you can find that skips ahead, yeah. Now that I'm thinking about it. Like, Marble Zone had a couple of secret rooms that you can find inside walls, and I know one of them has a secret room in the back of the secret room that skips you ahead a fair distance through the level. Right underneath a spike trap, so a little perilous to escape that way. But if you manage it, ooh, Jesus!
Thank you, Invincibility Frames.
This thing is really pissed off now.
Yeah, I love this guy. He's in every single campaign. My favorite thing is, it's actually in the main campaign where when you fight him, his little intro screen says, "I'm back," and then when you get to his phase 2 and he puts this on, he gets a new intro screen and it says, "And I got this sweet new coat." So I would expect they probably bring him back for Splatoon 3 since it's like a recurring kind of boss. But we'll see. Maybe they just decide not to. I'm also not sure they're even going to have Octolings be the bad guys in Splatoon 3. My personal guess is they're going to do the salmons from the Salmon Run mode be the bad guy. But again, we know very little about that game. As a matter of fact, to date this recording even more than it already is, today we saw the Switch OLED model announcement video, and the most exciting thing about that video for me was the less than 10 seconds of Splatoon 3 footage where we saw them using the bow and getting like one shot off with the bow, and I was like, oh man, this looks sick. Totally worth not having Splatoon 3 at E3. Everybody, I swear. Definitely worth it. Maybe we'll bitch about the new Switch model in the next part, though. I don't know.
No, we already got that enough. Lewis and I already got enough of that on Twitter. Thank you.
Yeah.
You see, you got to do what I do and make one snarky comment and then don't talk about it ever again.
Yeah. I don't know. People are just so demanding about their consoles. Like,
I mean, I guess people have been really wanting this upgrade, I suppose, is, I guess, the thing.
Well, I mean, if you want a $500 version of the Switch that does 4K and runs the games better, more power to you. But, you know, I'd rather just, like, not have that because it's $500.
Are you saying you don't have a spare $500 up your ass to spend on video games at a moment's notice? What kind of gamer even are you?
Also, if you're looking for something that displays in 4K, you're probably playing it on your big TV, in which case just buy a PlayStation or Xbox or something.
Okay, I agree with you in principle, Ryan, but just as a counterpoint, you can't buy a PlayStation or Xbox right now.
You know what I mean.
You know,
That was the thing.
maybe that's why I don't care about the 4K stuff. I play on a bedroom-sized PC monitor. Like it's at a size where you won't even find televisions that run at this resolution. It needs to be a PC monitor. So like I have no motivation to ever play anything in 4K. I won't.
I'm still using the same 720p Samsung LCD that I've had since 2010. So,
well, I mean, my actual TV is old as dirt too. I bought this thing back when I was working at Walmart, which was like right after high school. I don't really particularly care about resolution. Like it feels like at certain sizes, like at this monitor size, my monitor displays at 1080p, right? And even that for this size is pushing it. So why would I care about 4K? That's my mentality, you know? So like 4K is a feature for all of these consoles that I'm never going to use ever. Even if I get like a new TV or new monitor, it's always going to be this size anyway, because this is where I play my games, at a desk. I hook my PC to the same display that I hook my consoles, and I just change the wires around or hit a switch to switch which one I'm using, you know? There's no reason for me to do anything else.
It's okay. Someday they'll stop talking about making you upgrade to 4K, and then you can upgrade to 8K or 32K or whatever the new K is.
So you can have a fucking literal movie theater in your living room.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the American.
Everybody's gonna have one of those, right?
That's the American dream right there.